Payment processor Visa announced Saturday its plan to separately categorize gun shop sales, joining MasterCard and American Express, which have already said that they would categorize purchases at firearm stores. Visa said it would apply the International Organization for Standardization new merchant code to gun shop sales. So now you have this International Organization for Standardization got its marching orders from what, a bank in New York or something like this. I'll read on and see if it has it here. And then they're going to apply those standards to these United States, so that every purchase you make at the gun store, and for those of you who think, well, I'll just pull a bunch of money out. Hold on. You better believe that the FBI, DOJ, Homeland Security, etc., that if they are targeting you, and we'll get into that in a moment, if they are targeting you and they see you pull out $2,500 out of the bank, they're going to assume you just purchased a firearm. They see you pull out $1,500 at the bank, they're going to conclude that you just purchased a firearm. And then they'll begin looking. So you'll be able to take this list. This is what the federal government, the anti-whites, will be able to do now. While anti-whites are driving around in hoopties looking to blow your head off because you're white, you're not going to get away with it because you're white. The anti-whites in the federal government are looking to ways to how to disarm you, how to make you helpless, how to prevent you from exercising your right to self-defense. They'll be able to cross-check that list with other lists they have of terrorists, everybody who actually wants to get in the way of anti-whiteism. And then they'll say, oh, you are on this list. You were a part of this group. You were at that march. Well, look over here. You've made purchases at gun stores. And then they're going to come to your house. This is how it's going to, this is how the anti-whites would like it to play out. My opinion. The new iOS code was announced on Friday previously. Gun store sales were labeled at, okay, so prior to that, gun store sales were labeled as general merchandise to protect your privacy. We used to have that. It's gone. America's gone. There's a map still out there with America written on it. And there are documents with America written on it. America's long gone. What do you think? What do you think the thug anti-whites and the hoopties will do when they know that you've been disarmed? Do you think they'll just drive by your house? Do you think they'll just drive by your work? Do you think they'll just drive by and see, oh, there's one out on the street. Shoot that one because we'll speed out of here. We won't get caught. And he won't, or she won't be able to shoot at us because they've been disarmed by the government because they're terrorists. No, they're going to do like the Carr brothers and others. They're going to come into your house. They're going to come into your house armed to the teeth. You know where else this is already happening to us? South Africa. That's your preview. That's your window. That's what's happening to us in South Africa. And that's what's going to happen to us here in the United States. It's already happening. It's already, that's how we can talk about the Carr brothers. Already happening. They know the white people are unlikely to be armed. They know that they are willing, because of their white guilt, they're willing to submit. Somebody wrote a book, and I'm not going to name the book, and nobody named the book. Somebody wrote a book where there was a scene that was so apropos because it was so insightful and had such ability to predict, if nothing changed, exactly where we would get. And in that scene, there were 2 anti-whites, and there were like 7 white males. And the anti-whites had did they have a gun? Yes, I think they had a gun in the scene. I think they had a gun, but it was like a Saturday night special, like a 25 caliber. Or was it a knife? Anyhow, The white guys all obsequiously got on their knees in this scene in this book and allowed themselves one by one to be executed instead of rushing them and taking the knife away or taking the gun away or whatever it was. That's how cowardly the white race has become. I know people read that back then and they thought, no, that would be really, it's happened with the Carr brothers. It's happened other places, and it will increasingly happen the more these anti-white thugs who, if you can't keep the cocaine out of their noses, right? If you can't keep the marijuana out of their lungs, and you can't keep the illegal firearms out from their backsides, then all they can do is prevent you and me, law abiders, from defending ourselves if these bastards come for us. And this is where it begins in earnest. Following ISO's decision to establish a new merchant category code, Visa will proceed with next steps while ensuring we protect all legal commerce on the Visa network in accordance with our long-standing rules, Visa said in a statement. This is where, and I can't keep into, we've got to get through this, but this is where a psychological defense for the psychological warfare waged against us, if it had been promulgated, like if when I first started talking about this, the white sympathetic sphere had said, my God, it's working and I can see how it works. And then they wanted to help me spread it everywhere. Who knows at this point now, how many people at Visa, employees at Visa, at MasterCard, at American Express, would have said, oh, no, and would have been empowered with the psychological defense against this warfare to stand up against it. Maybe enough to have prevented this. Maybe enough to have prevented the next steps that Visa and other merchants are going to be moving forward with. The move by Visa signals a major victory for gun control advocates. Okay, who was that? You want to apologize now to me? Who was that came in and argued with me pretty vehemently about they don't call themselves gun control advocates? Gun control advocates who argue that a separate category for gun store sales will help track suspicious quantities. It's always just like, well, what could it actually be? We're just looking out for something really bizarre. You could still buy, you want to buy your rifle, you want to buy your pistol, whatever. You could still buy all that. No worries until next year when we decide that is suspicious and we send agents to your house. That could potentially lead to a mass shooting. Oh, potentially. But gun rights advocates, again, it should be self-defense advocates. If you were to, if the entire industry or all of the groups who support the Second Amendment were calling themselves self-defense advocates, then the authors here would have to call you that to be able to speak to your community. Gun rights advocates and gun lobbyists have said categorizing gun shop sales would be unfair to the industry, given that most firearm sales do not result in mass shootings. Can you believe how just sort of flippantly and sophistically this is written? Did anybody actually, or is this just a straw man? You know what? It's entirely possible that some gun right advocate decided to say that, well, most purchases don't end in mass shootings. I could see somebody that stupid. Visa, which acts as a middleman between merchants and banks, is the largest payment network, and with 3 major payment processors all electing to label gun store sales, there will now likely be pressure placed on banks as card issuers to decide if they will permit purchases categorized as gun shop sales on their cards. Am I understanding this right? What did you all hear there? With all 3 major payment processors all electing to label gun store sales, there will now likely be pressure placed on banks as card issuers to decide if they will permit purchases categorized as gun shop sales on their issued cards. So, is that a preview on what the anti-whites are going to do next? They're going to move to the banks and they're going to say, well, if you want to have an account with us, you want to be able to bank with us, you want to be able to use a credit card with us, then you are prohibited from buying anything from a gun dealer, any product, any firearm, etc. And guess what? We can't talk about it because we lost the freedom of speech. We lost it. It's gone. Two of the largest public pension funds in the U.S., which are located in California and New York, pension funds, have put pressure on the country's largest credit card companies to adopt separate sales codes for gun sales. Now, let me ask you something. What the does pension funds have to do with the right to self-defense and taking that away from us? You know, it's like all of you people who are members of AARP. Have you ever looked? I remember back on the Hill. Have you ever looked at what they do with your money? They are radically anti-white. So where is your money today? Is it with some public pension fund accruing this tiny little bit of this while they then use the wealth that they are accumulating off of you to go and take your right to self-defense away? A just government would prosecute them for that, would find a way to shut these pension funds down, would find a way to send every one of the people in charge who was doing this to jail or worse for taking away the right to self-defense. They take away the right to self-defense. What does that mean? It means rape. It means murder. Merchant category codes are not exclusive to gun store sales. However, as the codes now exist for nearly every type of purchase, including those in supermarkets, that is a false equation, which anti-whites do all the time. It's another fallacy. They do this all the time when you have a debate or argument with them. And that is, well, everybody gets to know that you bought a coffee. I don't give a shit. I don't give a shit if everybody gets to know I bought a coffee. I mean, ultimately, if you want to argue all the way back that you should have your privacy even for that, whatever. But there's a big difference. There's a universe of difference between whether or not you bought bread and whether or not you bought a firearm. When you buy an airline ticket or pay for your groceries, okay, let's jump. Gun control advocates, claim that the merchant code for standalone gun and ammunition retailers could curb gun violence. It's what always happens. Gun rights advocates, look at these two sides. Contest that tracking gun store sales gun store sales would target legal gun purchases because merchant codes only label the type of merchant where the credit or debit card is used, not specific items. Well, what a moronic argument to make. So right now, the code, this new change that Visa, everybody in charge of Visa should be brought up on charges to undermine the right to self-defense in the United States. That is treason to the United States. If I were a tyrant, lord, and king over this country, I would go after all of these people. I would prosecute them all for treason to the United States. They know very well and good this is about victimizing Western kind. So right now, the way they set it up is, the code is that you made a purchase from a gun dealer or gun store rather than the specific items in the store. And then the gun rights advocates, if that's an accurate of the argument that they're making, a retelling of the argument that they're making, are saying, well, it's going to punish the gun dealer because it's not specifying what the person purchased. We don't want any specificity, you dipshits. if you make a $2,500 purchase or $1,500 purchase from a gun dealer or a gun store, the government, the anti-whites and the government are going to conclude it's a firearm, even if it's a safe or something else that might cost that much, or a bunch of things together. So more specificity isn't going to make things better for us, because they'll say, okay, he got a gun safe, means he has guns. She purchased a bag for a rifle, means she has a rifle. Jesus, the idiocy is just midget wittery without end. Purchase of a gun. Oh, it says right there, a gun safe, for example, could be seen as a large purchase. All right. Quote, the industry's decision to create a firearms specific code is nothing more than a capitulation to anti-gun politics. That's what they're really against. It's just politicians who are opposed to guns. How sympathetic is a firearm? God damn, I've talked to these people for so many years. I'm so sick of you all. I fucking hate you all. You can make an argument to these dumbass booby white people again and again and again, and they just stick with it. They just stick with the idiocy. Oh, well, that guy over there, the fair-skinned guy, the fair-featured guy with the rippling muscles, he came up with something that apparently works better than what we're doing, but I'm just going to stick with the words that the regime gives me. I think that's the smart thing to do. That's why you keep losing. The IQ has fallen so drastically for the white race. This sense of self-preservation is just gone. Industry's decision to create a firearm-specific code is nothing more than a capitulation to anti-gun politicians and activists bent on eroding the rights of law-abiding Americans one transaction at a time, said the absolute dip-shitting, head-dunking in the toilet idiots at the National Rifle Association. And it's not just them. It's all of these other gun rights advocates out there and gun rights organizations out there.